This show is sponsored by the National Association for Primary Education. Hello, my name is Mark Taylor and welcome to the Education on Fire podcast. The place for creative and inspiring learning from around the world. Listen to teachers, parents and mentors share how they are supporting children to live their best authentic life and are proving to be a guiding light to us all. Hello and welcome to the Education on Fire podcast. We talk a lot about child-focused, child-centred idea of education, and that really stems from the understanding of who we are as people, the idea of being grateful, of being kind, of understanding who we are on a level which is more than just an academic subject. And my guest today is Susan Hartley, and she's one of the founders of Yoginis Yoga.uk, and they use that as the starting point for their programme to bring yoga and the idea of mindfulness and well-being and all these factors to many children throughout the UK and further afield through their online programme and licensing. If you'd like to find out more and continue this conversation, please do go to educationonfire.com, where you can sign up to the newsletter, download our top 10 resources, but also get an invitation to our private Facebook group, where there's a wider community where we continue these conversations about the podcast and really help grow our idea and our sense of how we can support children in our own lives. This is my conversation with Susan Hartley talking about yoga and their programme, Yoginis Yoga.uk. Hi Susan, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm excited to have this conversation because yoga is something which I've done on and off in various parts of my life and something which I'm very keen to get back into. There's a new practice actually which has started in our village, which is I'm really excited to be able to go and take part in as soon as we're able to do so. And also having been involved in schools, obviously doing workshops with my music, actually seeing how mindfulness and actually this whole more awareness, I think, about the well-being of children is just incredibly important. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me along and giving me the opportunity to speak to your listeners.
So let's start with a little bit about where are you based? Tell us a bit about the organisation and the sorts of things that you do for teachers and schools.
Okay, so we are based in the northwest, Greater Manchester area, or Lancashire. You can probably tell by my accent. Yes, so we're based there, but our reach, we reach all across the UK and into Ireland. We are Yoginis Yoga Training Limited. So basically what we do is we train the educators or nursery teachers, nursery practitioners, sports coaches, NHS physical activity leads, anybody really that has any dealings with children and is interested in their well-being and mental health.
Give us a little bit about the backstory. How did you get involved in yoga? Why is it such an integral part of your life?
Okay, so I'd been practicing yoga for a number of years, and I'd had my children, and it was just after my last child when I was on maternity, and I don't know why, but my husband just turned around to me and he just said, do you know, he said, if you want to change your career, he said, and you want to be anything that you want to be, he said, you can be that now, you can do that now, you can make that change now. And I was like, wow. And then somebody dropped a magazine on my lap, which was about the Yoga show in Manchester, which was like the first one ever that was delivered there. And in it was workshops for children's yoga. And I thought, that sounds interesting. So I went on one of these workshops and I thought, yeah, I think this is what I can see myself doing. And it just felt like a calling. So that's really just what got the wheels going in motion, really. And then I started training with the British Wheel of Yoga because they're the only yoga school which is recognised by Sports England. So I felt as though I'd got some kind of quality assurance as to where my training was coming from. And I trained with other children's yoga providers. And this is where I met my business partner, Katie. She was on the same diploma training course as myself, and she was also interested in children's yoga. Little did we know that a bit later down the line we'd come together and we'd come up with the programme that we've got now, because what we found was it's difficult to upskill anybody who hasn't got a knowledge of yoga or maybe even an interest in yoga with the courses, the training courses that are out there now to deliver children's yoga. So we thought we needed to come up with something different. So that's what our programme is. It's very unique, and we know that nobody else is teaching it this way. It's based on routine and structure, and also the way children learn. So we listen very carefully to what educators and nursery practitioners and consultants had to say about child development, and the way that children take in information and things like that. And then we looked at latest research in neuroscience and biomechanics, looking at the brain and how that is in childhood and how it develops going through adolescence and things like that. And then we said, right, okay, so we need to come up with a programme that's very simple, that doesn't have any planning, because teachers just haven't got the time for that. Because to Katie and myself, we see what we have and we see how it's benefited ourselves, our own children, our friends who come to us and say, have you got any tips? Have you got any advice? Can you help the child with this? Blah, blah, blah. And we see that evidence before us, and we thought we've just got to share this. And then as we started to deliver this ourselves, it just became more in demand. And so therefore we thought we haven't got the capacity to be able to do this. So it all kind of sprung from this need, really, of people wanting what we had. And so we came up, like I say, with our unique programme, and we thought, well, how can we show schools and other organisations that this is safe and that it's okay? So we went with the Children's Activity Association. They kind of lobby Parliament for a lot of things to do with children, for activities that are safe. A lot of larger organisations are with them, like Swimming Babies, Rugger Tots, Little Kickers, Little Voices, Baby Ballet. All those kind of major organisations are also accredited through them. So we thought, well, if we go with this organisation and get our courses externally verified by them, then we know that we're industry compliant. And when we go into organisations, we can say, look, we are accountable to these people to make sure that whatever we're training or delivering is safe for children. So we went with those, and then we had our courses CPD very certified, so that people can have that quality assurance that when they're paying for any training, it's quality training that they're receiving. And so we're in roughly, I think the last count we did, which was it might have been about 6 or 8 months ago, we're in roughly about 160 schools and growing. Obviously, it's come to a bit of a standstill with COVID, yes. In the sense where maybe sports coaches can't. They had such a massive demand for it, so they've actually really expanded where that wider field, if you like, of reach. But obviously that's a bit limited for them at the moment. But, our programmes have been delivered to 50,000 children and growing, which is what has been our thing, because part of our programme is that the children own that practice and it becomes theirs, it becomes part of them and who they are. So it's not just you're not just teaching them like yoga or physical exercise, which, we sort of talk about as being your physical well-being, the yoga side of it, and the mindfulness, we talk about that as being your mental and your emotional health. So it's kind of twofold. So they're not just getting this physical benefit of feeling healthy and having a better posture, being able to breathe better, so more oxygenated blood going into the body, so the organs are healthier. And it's not just that physical side, but it's also this emotional and mental health, because we're teaching them tools and techniques, like you touched on it earlier yourself about mindfulness, about how it helps them to respond rather than react. And the earlier these children get these tools, the better it is, because we know through some reports that Young Minds have done that 1 in 5 adults are diagnosed with a mental health disorder, and 1 in 10 children are diagnosed with a mental health disorder. So that can equate to roughly 3 children in every classroom. And 50% of all these mental health problems, they manifest themselves by the age of 14. And they also report on the impact on mental health in childhood has in adulthood. And 1 in 3 adult mental health conditions relate directly to adverse childhood experiences. So we might think it's not important to teach our children these tools yet because they're a bit young, but actually this is the prime time to teach the children these things and these tools and techniques, because this is your prevention rather than cure. So if we can build these into the children in a very fun way, and we know that being physically active and learning go really well together for brain development and connecting those synapses and embedding those things. If we can do that, then these kids are kind of like set up for life, if you like, and obviously they'll still have to choose whether they want to use those tools and techniques, but they're there, they've got them, and they can't shake them off, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's so incredibly important, because what we want is we want children to be aware as much as anything, don't you? Like you say, be aware of your body, be aware of movement, be aware of mind chatter, be aware that all these things, they're not just that you have an influence personally on how you respond to those things. Obviously, if you move more, then that has a physical result, and if you, like you say, even just the breathing and the oxygen and just understanding how these things are. And I think, that's essentially what we need first. It's fuel, it's understanding, it's, and then the sort of the academic learning, as it were, is something which then can just be expanded as your life expands as well. And I think it absolutely should be an integral part of everything that goes on. And I had a question for you about when you're teaching teachers and people going in to deliver these things. Certainly I understood from when I was doing music sessions like this, is that because it's something that teachers sometimes are completely unsure of, or it's not been in their experience in the past, they can be quite wary about it. And what I really loved was you started to say about the fact that if you're coming to it from a sort of a child understanding kind of way, did they sort of find that relationship in that way of teaching much more supportive than kind of, I need to learn an entirely new world that I know nothing about?
Yes, and that's why we've approached it the way that we have, because they don't have to know anything. I mean, obviously, in the training itself, we do explain all about our programme and why it's delivered and structured this particular way. And that's why we also keep to a very similar routine. So even though teachers build up through the levels their knowledge, and they're constantly maintaining that skill throughout the time that they are delivering this and they're part of the membership. It's because it's a child-led sort of activity, and it's very simple and easy to do. It's not like yoga as people would consider it to be. So we did consider at the beginning whether we should call it that, but we thought, actually, no, why not? Because that's really what it is. We've just made it sort of child friendly. So because it's that approach, if you like, the teachers probably won't actually feel the delivering yoga. To them, it'll just be, I don't know what the word, but another activity, really.
Yeah.
Just another activity that they're delivering. But all these things are interwoven in it, which we do obviously explain through the training as we go along, but not in a very heavy way, but just to explain where these ideas have come from that we've come up with and why we're using that particular way of doing something. Because if you look at a lot of other therapies, like cognitive therapy, a lot of those are yoga-based exercises. If you go to a professional to be treated for your anxiety, a lot of those techniques that they will use, we can, take you back to the yoga scriptures, if you like to call them that way, and you'll see that they've been there for thousands of years. So a lot of medical organisations have taken a lot of the yoga exercises and techniques and tools, and they've just put them under a different name, and they've just integrated them into their programs. So really, that's all we've done. We've just got all those tools and techniques, and then we've looked at, what methods teachers use in lots of different ways, and we've put a combination of those things together and brought this program. And that's why we can say nobody else is training teachers this way.
So, someone that comes across you, I mean, in this particular case, having heard you talking on this particular podcast, where do they go? What do they then see? And then talk us a little bit through how it works. You know, that they have to sign up, how the levels work, the sorts of things that you talk about and you train with. Just sort of take us through that process.
Right. Okay. So we have a website. They can go to our website and they can learn more about us there. So there's lots of things on the website. We do have some free resources. We have explanations about what our course structure is about, and we have some blogs. And there's also, if you wanted to find out a little bit more about me and Katie and things like that, there's some more information. So there's lots of things they can learn there, and then they can inquire and they will receive some more information. But basically, how our program works is it's a licensed product. So the reason why it's licensed, because one of the requirements for us to be able to be sort of accredited through the Children's Activity Association was, well, how do you keep tabs on your coaches? How do you know that they are delivering this still in a safe way? So that's why we actually came up with the online program, because we needed a platform where coaches could come in, and through this platform we know what resources they've taken. We know this is where they pick up the CPD, this is where they can receive support from us, this is where they get the training manual, this is where they get all other resources that they need to be able to deliver the activity. And through that we can monitor that, so we know everything really that a coach does, and that's why we so we had to have this platform. So that's why we took it online. And this is our licensed product, and this is like a membership, is what we call it. And this is where they get the CPD updates throughout the years to maintain that skill. So they get all of that through our licensed product, and also because we want to keep it to its purest form if we can. We don't want to deviate from that, because we know that it's successful as it is, and that's one way of monitoring that. And we do sometimes get teachers saying, oh, can we do it this, can we do that? And we'll say no, because there are a lot of things. What we're dealing with here, we're dealing with people's well-being, mental and emotional health and well-being, and unless you actually know the reason behind some of the things that you're doing, or the exercises, or you have that experience to know, sometimes that can create a reaction, from the children that you might not be prepared for. So knowledge really and understanding of what you're doing is key, and following the program is, so that you're getting the right results, if you like. So that's the idea of the license of the platform, and they can go there and they can get all those things. This is where they give us feedback on there as well. There's a progress tracker, so if you wanted to demonstrate or evidence, what benefits this has been for the children, how they've progressed, because we do know that sometimes has to be a key for some schools, in order to justify spending the money on the training.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's all these things there, and then this is where they become they constantly be upskilled. So they start off with this level 1, and then as they become more confident in that area and the program and the structure and its routine, then they can start to add to that, and they add to that level, and they can keep adding to it. And then once they have got all the levels, then they're more confident then in being able to mix and match and be able to tailor the sessions more then for the children that they're teaching. And then over time, that will just become a natural process to them.
And do you find that schools have all of their teachers taking part in the programme so they can deliver it to their class, or do you find there's one teacher that sort of takes the lead and then becomes like the person that delivers it for everybody? What's the kind of experience that you've had in that regard?
It varies. So some schools will say, yes, we want this right from our early years, because obviously it's great to start them there, because then as they come through school, it's like a whole school approach, and it's that consistency of, so by the time then they're going off to be teenagers, they've had all that time to perfect these skills and techniques, if you like, and embed them in them. So some schools really take it on board, and they'll have everybody, to do that. And then there'll be others who'll say, we're quite happy to just have 2 or 3 teachers to take these sessions. Maybe it's like if they're a TA and they normally do PPA, they might say, right, well, we'll do the yoga sessions, in the hall for the different classes. There's lots of varieties of ways. Sometimes it's just PE leads. They're the ones who take it up, and they might deliver that as PE or before, after school clubs, lunchtime, anything like that, really. Yeah, and then this is why we train sports coaches, because you have some schools who say, well, I don't really want my staff to be taken away from anything to do that, so we're quite happy to get a sports company in to come in and deliver that throughout the school day. So yeah, there's many different ways. But if a school did decide to do this, it does demonstrate to Ofsted correct use of sports premium, because you are upskilling the staff, and it is it's maintained as well.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, the benefit having it as a culture within your school is really something to celebrate, isn't it? Because it means that it's all embedded, and if we're talking about a child first centered education, then that's an amazing way of doing it, because you're talking about, as we said, all those attributes that you have from yoga and all the ways that children benefit from that. So yeah, it's great to hear that there are so many different outlets and so many different ways for people to make the most of it. Just tell us the name of your website again, just first of all, so that people can check that out and remember.
So it's www.yoginis, which is spelled YOGINIS, yoga.uk.
Fantastic. And we'll have all these things on the show notes as well, so people can click through. But I just want to make sure that people know exactly where they can go to get all that great information. So let's talk a little bit now about your education experiences, both from having gone into schools, I guess, to develop these things, but also in terms of actually being a student in school. Is there anything which had a big impact on you, or a teacher that actually, made you suddenly think, oh, there's more to this than just being at school? What was your experience in that regard?
Oh, yes. I had, it's secondary school for me. When I first went to secondary school, or high school, I think they call it now, don't they? I'm showing my age. And there was a teacher there, which I didn't discover till my own children were going back to that school, that he was 22 when he came to teach me, and it was his first time, at a school, and we had a joke about it, and I said, oh, have you always looked that old? Because when you're young, everybody just looks really old. Absolutely. Doesn't matter how old they are. Yeah. And yes, and he was such an inspiration to me. He was like a breath of fresh air as a teacher. He just made you feel special, he made you feel valued, and he made you feel understood, which as a teenager, a lot of the time you don't feel adults do that. And he was brilliant at being able to see that special thing within each child, and to get down onto your level and have, a really good chat with you. And he was brilliant, because you could go to him with any of your problems, or just a chat if you're upset. But he also spotted things in people. Maybe didn't think something was quite right. He was very observant that way. And he got me involved in drama at school. And because I was very good at doing impressions, and I used to impersonate a lot of the teachers, and he got me involved in drama and doing plays, and he even encouraged me and hooked me up with a drama school outside of school and things like that, and that really sort of gave me a lot of confidence. And it showed me that it didn't matter who you are or what you were good at or whatever is, but you could always be whatever it is that you wanted to be. And that's that's what he taught me. He was such an inspiration. Yeah.
It's interesting. Just before we started recording, we were talking about relationships and meeting with friends and all of that kind of thing. And I think it's really interesting what you said there about the fact that some teachers just see you, they understand you, they relate to you on a personal level, and it's that makes the biggest impact. It's not how well they taught history or geography or maths or whatever. It's that comes from the fact that you're engaged as, I think, two human beings, albeit one a teacher and one a pupil. But I think I hear that quite a lot now, and I just think that's a really important factor, that especially if you're a child listening, it's that kind of, when you feel like someone sees you and takes you for who you are, because everyone's obviously very different, but I think that just enables you to then think, okay, this is something I can actually understand and connect with. And I guess, sort of going full circle, I think when yoga's is a way of being connected with yourself, so that you'd actually then also be able to understand that a little bit as well.
Yeah, connecting as human beings, that's part of their nature, to connect with one another and feel like we belong. And I don't think, whether you're an adult or a child, that is what everybody wants to feel. And unless they feel that, they're not normally that happy. You know what I mean? That's where our happiness kind of comes from. It comes from that connection. And even people, who look at mental health issues and things like that, that's what a lot of they'll say is what kind of good mental health is really. It's that ability to make friends and form relationships and maintain them. And like you're saying, that's what people often remember, isn't it, from school and the people they meet. It's those connections. And like myself, I just think as well, I've got friends that I am still in touch with, and we still meet up, we still go out and enjoy and do things together. And they were in my infant school. So we've been friends since we were 5 years old, and we're still friends now and connecting. So connection, I think, is really important. And that all comes down to, how you feel emotionally and mentally about yourself as well. Yeah.
And what was the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Right. I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, I don't want it to be anything that my mother said. I don't want it to have that credit. You know what I mean? I was thinking that. So then I thought, what was it? And then I just thought, well, if I'm completely honest, it's trust your gut. Trust your gut feeling and your gut reaction to something. That is the one thing that I have learned my entire life, whether it's about developing friendships, relationships, being in work, business transactions or collaborations or anything like that, or even just being in a place and suddenly thinking to yourself, do you know what? Don't know what it is, but it just doesn't feel right here. I felt trust that intuition. And I do feel that a lot of people today don't know how to do that, because so many risk factors in life have been taken away from us to protect us, which is not a bad thing. But sometimes we just become so out of tune with trusting our intuition that actually it becomes more risky for us. Life can become more risky and we can get ourselves into more trouble. So trusting your gut, and the person that taught me that was life itself. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes you just go away and go, why did I not listen to myself?
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of you sort of knew it all along, but you just it was that kind of, no, but it can't be. No, it can't be. And I think part of that comes from what we learn as we're growing up now. Everything is so kind of result orientated, isn't it?
Yes.
I do this to achieve this, or I get this mark out of this, or in order to do this I have to do this, and having that intuition based starting point just doesn't fit into that. And I think it's only by understanding it, talking about it, which is why I love having these conversations, that people start to go, yes, I know that. I've been hearing myself thinking that or being part of that, and there are other people who are doing the same, and that's why, as we said sort of earlier in the conversation, having things like yoga, having things like the understanding of well-being at the heart of a school is something which is integral to what we're teaching children. Just enables them to go, yes, this is who I am, and I understand who I am. And then it just gives you what you need then to then grow into the life that you are here to live. That is different for everybody, and I think only you actually know what that is, even as many parents may decide that's different. But but that's a really interesting point, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's body awareness, you see. That's really what it is. It's body awareness. And in the society that we live in today, we're not encouraged to look inwards and to see how we feel and what we think. We're kind of told to grasp outwardly. So in other words, like if it's like, oh, this will make me happy. Oh, that will make me slimmer. Oh, that will help me with this. Oh, that will help me with that. Oh, I'll take one of those and that will make me think, oh, if I drink that, that'd be better. Rather than internalizing and thinking, actually, no, what is it? What is it my body is asking for? What is it that my body is saying it needs? And the more you begin to listen to your body, the more you become in tune with it. And that's how you become to understand your intuition. And because you know what feels right and what doesn't. And it leads on to all other things. So like, for instance, like getting to understand your body and how it works and how it functions and how it reacts to things. So it could just be something as simple as just becoming mindfully aware of what you eat and when you eat and how does that affect your body. And so for somebody who might say, oh, I've been struggling with my weight, or I'm not as fit as I'd like, I might look okay, but I'm not as fit as I like. And instead of looking outwards for those answers and to get results, try just looking inwards and becoming more mindful of those things. And you'll actually find that the answers are there all the time. Just an example I give of that, just maybe to help people understand that a little bit better, it's like my children. So it's eating habits, and they're called habits because that's basically what they are. So you inherit those habits from your parents because they set what you eat when you're younger. So that is then your habit. So if you have these good habits that you give your children, making good, healthy food choices and eating, when they then start going out and you have no control over them, what they're going to be eating because they're out with their friends and they've got their own money and they're purchasing their own things, you can only hope then what you have instilled in them is habits or eating habits will have an impact. But you see, the body, it remembers those things and it knows what it likes and what it doesn't, and it knows when you've overindulged and when you haven't. And if you're in tune with your body, it'll instantly send an alert to say, right, that's enough now. And my children will say that. I'll say, oh, have you had a good day? You gone out? Oh yeah, we went here. I said, what did you do? They go, oh, Mum, couldn't eat it. I just said to them, I'm sorry, I can't eat here. I'll just go and get something from somewhere else. It's just said, I just couldn't put that in my body. And I thought, oh yeah, it does work. Yeah. So, so it's this, so they have a body awareness, and they know sort of like when you go somewhere like to a party and people saying, oh, are you having something? And they go, oh no, thanks, I'm okay. I've had enough. And I just think it's nice to be able to think that, you know that about yourself, because so many of us just don't know when we've had enough of something or when it's too late and then we're paying a price for having too much, whatever that may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always think back, well, there are two things that cross my mind. One is I can't remember the name of the TV show now, but they sort of had a group of children that were basically living on their own for a week or so. And they had to cook for themselves and all of that. And so for the first few days, they just all ate pizza and did whatever. But it didn't take very long for them to think, actually, I need something else, whether it was some fruits or some vegetables or something that actually, once you get over the fact that, oh, you can have everything and anything that you like, you start to think, actually, do I really want more of this? there's only so much sweet stuff that you can have, and your body really does react in a bad way when that's the case. And I think sometimes that, like I say, you do know when you really take a look at that. And the other thing is I remember when our children were very small, was taking that kind of more global look at what they're eating as well. I mean, I'm sort of talking when they're first starting to explore food and that kind of thing. It's that kind of, what do they eat over a week? Because today they seem to just eat carbohydrate, and the next day they just seem to eat protein, and then the next day it was a sort of a fruit fest or whatever, and you think, oh, I'm trying to give them a balanced diet. And it was only when I was sort of understood and people started saying, but what did they eat over the course of a week? And it's that kind of, they've had a really balanced range of things, and they do know, because at that age, it's, they'll eat it or they won't. You have very little control over that. They know exactly what they need, and it seems to work out. And I think the more we can support children, like as we've been talking about, to understand what it is that they need as they get older, rather than doing what they think they have to do because someone's telling them, but having that understanding and that knowledge of good practice and good habits. Also with, like you said, that intuition of kind of, but actually I don't want that today for whatever reason that happens to be. And I think all of these skills together, they're so integral to, like you say, that is essentially well-being and health and all of those things, because you know that you've got your best interests at heart.
Yes, and we kind of teach the kids that way as well. How we explain like body awareness to the children is like about being kind to yourself and kind to others, and that's really what that's about. What you're saying is, actually, no, that's not what I need, this is what I need, and if I'm not going to have that just because I should, or it's available or whatever. I'm going to show myself kindness, and I'm going to give myself what it needs, and it's okay to be that. And that's kind of like an ethos thing that we have in our training and in our program, and it's something that we encourage people to take up, even if they've not they're not doing our training or anything like that. Our part of our mission is to spread kindness, and not just kindness towards others, but kindness towards yourself. And when you think about what that word means, about being kind to yourself, it's about, making sure that physically you're okay, mentally you're okay, emotionally you're okay, all those things. It's just sort of all brought together through just being kind to yourself. And then once we can start being kind to ourselves that way, then we can start being kind to others, because we see that need in them, and we see how that has affected us, so therefore then we want them to have that same thing. And when we do that, kindness becomes a bit contagious then. And not only that, kindness also has the power to transform. And if we spread kindness, then that's how we can bring about change.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I think one thing you touched on there, I think, is some people do struggle with sometimes, is the fact that in order for you to be able to give to other people, you need to fill yourself up first. And I think that filling yourself up with kindness and understanding and all of that, like you say, then becomes contagious, because you're then able to give that out. And I think sometimes people think it's always about giving to other people, but I think you do need to have that self-centered idea of what that involves for you first, and then you have all the ability in the world then to share it.
Yes, and showing kindness to others as well, like to yourself and to others. But it's not just a simple act in itself, but it just releases the happy hormones as well. So that's why we say the secret to happiness is spreading kindness. So if we want to be happy, one of the ways to do that is to be kind. And another verse, really, I don't know who actually said this, but it's something that I picked up, and I always say this to the kids, and especially teenagers, because beauty, being beautiful is something that's just hammered into them all the time, isn't it, through the media? Look like this, be that, and I always say to them, I always ask them this question. I say, if you want to be the most beautiful person in the world, what do you think it is that you have to do? And they're all like, they come out with all kinds of things. And I just say, the answer to that is to be kind. That's what makes you the most beautiful person in the world. And then I just get them to think. I say, you just think about people who are really, really kind, who you just feel drawn to, and you just think, I really love that person. And then compare them with those people who you think or you thought was beautiful, these TV celebrities or people like that. I say that you're saying, oh, look like this, or do have this and look like that. I say, when you compare them, that's a different kind of beauty, but that's the person really you're drawn to that kind of person. So if you want to be the most beautiful person in the world, the best thing you can be is kind.
Yeah, love that. And just to finish off, is there a podcast, a book, a film, a song, or anything any kind of resource which has had a real big impact on your life?
Do you know what? Have you got a list as long as your arm?
I was going to say we can extend it to a part 2.
Oh yeah, I'm constantly on self-development all the time, reading books about the mind, about energy. I've been reading a lot about the power of energy and how we can work that in our bodies to heal ourselves. So there's constantly reading and listening to books. Sorry, not to books. Listening to interviews or TED Talks or other people's webinars or videos, and always reading books. And I'm one of these as well. I have about 3 books on the go at the same time. So I pick one up and I'll read that, and I think, all right, okay, that's got a bit heavy for now. I'll just put that down. I start another one, and then I start making the connections between the books, saying, oh, actually, that person's actually collaborating on that thought with that. So then that sends me off to somewhere else, and I start looking more into that. So I couldn't actually pin it down to any particular thing because I just have so many things on the go. But I always say that knowledge is power, but not knowledge of knowing things, but know about the world. I feel a bit like a child, being curious, I think, about lots of different ways that people interpret things, like saying about healing through, getting the body to heal itself. What does that mean exactly? So that got me off going on to that. And then somebody else saying about the subconscious mind and how you can change those belief patterns that weren't really yours because they were your parent. And this is where I am, you see. It's not that I've got monkey brain where I'm bouncing from one thing to the other, but I'm just so curious about the body and the brain, the mind, how it's all connected, how these things all work together, that I've just got, loads.
Yeah, well, what a great thing. I mean, I think inquiry of life and all of that together, I mean, is a gift in itself. And I think exactly wherever you find that, and a little bit like you said before about the fact that a lot of these things have been around for a long time, and you start to find bits and pieces in different books or different conversations, and it all starts to come back to the essence of what we are, which I think is a great way for us to finish off, because it really kind of sort of brings all that back into focus. So just leave us with your website again so people know exactly where to go and have a look, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay, so our website is www.yoginisyoga.uk, and Yoginis is spelled Yoginis.
Fantastic. Well, Susan, thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today, and I look forward to having a chat again soon.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to the Education on Fire podcast. For more information of each episode and to get in touch, go to educationonfire.com. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. I'd like to thank the National Association for Primary Education for their continued support and sponsorship of this show. NAPE are currently supporting teachers by producing fortnightly videos which cover themes like art, school trips and literacy. Also, they are giving away e-copies of their professionally produced journal, Primary First. To find out more about the association, please go to nape.org.uk. That's nape.org.uk.